الملك لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everyone, our Deen Love viewers, today we have a very special and auspicious guest with us. Allahumma barak is our Sheikh Abdullah Bihi. And it's been a while since we've had him here, and there's been back and forth to try to get you here. How's everything with you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very well.
MashaAllah. Allah yabarak feekum. So alhamdulillah, we're happy to have you here, and I know that you've been doing a lot of traveling. How many countries, how many continents would you say you traveled to your whole life by this point?
Continents. I think I've been everywhere except South America.
Oh, mashallah. South America.
So 5 of the 7.
5 of the 7.
5 of the 7, alhamdulillah.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
So, what were the places would you say that kind of stood out to you, the most distinct memories you can have of the places you've traveled?
Allah, that's very very difficult because traveling, once you get used to it, the world starts to become very similar. So nothing surprises you, nothing shocks you.
So everything's the same.
In the beginning, if you asked this question, it would have been easier to answer. But now there's a lot of things that you can kind of estimate before you come to a place, especially when you're living in the city of Medina and you're already dealing with people from 180 countries.
I see.
You kind of already have it.
I think they said that's the most diverse place.
Yes.
It's statistically proven the most diverse place on earth, apparently, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
And so, Allahumma barak. Sheikh, just probably one of the points that's on everyone's minds is a lot of the masa'ib that's happening in the dunya today and around our Muslim countries. It's very tragic.
Yeah.
And for those believers, it's kind of hard to carry on here. Eating and drinking food, or drinking water, and eating in the time of iftar, thinking about what's happening. What would you say? Some tips? What can we do for our for those brothers and sisters elsewhere?
Yeah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve the stress of our brothers and sisters in Palestine.
No.
That's where we got to start off. We got to make as much dua as we can. That's one of the only ways we could do anything right now.
Yeah.
So we make dua for them. Secondly, if we really want to return to our glory that we once had, we have to do it like it was done before. We have to study how it was done before and then replicate it. If we don't study how it was done before, then we can't replicate it.
So the blueprint is there.
The blueprint exists. History repeats itself, as they say. All right? History always repeats itself. And the problem that we have is we're so ignorant. We don't even know our own history. We don't even know who our grandfather is, let alone what happened 300 years ago. We don't know how we got here, what brought us here. Like, we ask ourselves, listen, what are we doing in Minnesota? That is so random. Minnesota. Right? Or if you ask people who live in Minnesota, what does mini mean? Do they even know what Minnesota means?
That's a good
Mini means water in the local languages here. Right? We don't even know what it means. So how are we supposed to discuss grand matters when we don't even know our own history? So the first thing that we have to do is learn who we are, what we believe in, our aqeedah, our theology, and then secondly, learn about our history. Learn about how we got here. Because if we know how we got here, then we can solve the problems that arise from how we got to this situation. Yeah. So I would encourage my brothers and sisters to learn, to read, to understand, to analyze, to not be a bot, to not be a jock. Don't be another statistic. Be someone who's an intellectual, somebody who understands what's going on. And unfortunately, a lot of us, we run off emotions and we react to matters. We're reacting to something that's happening. To why did it happen to begin with? We put ourselves in that position. So if you really want to solve the situation first, get your life in order. If you can't pray and your prayer is not consistent, then I'm sorry, you have no business doing anything.
Yeah.
If you cannot rectify your affairs between you and your Lord, you're not going to help others. So rectify affairs between you and the Lord. If you can't rectify the affairs between you and the people around you, then you're not going to help others. If you don't understand what's going on, because people think they understand, because social media puts you in this. Social media, there's a lot of people discussing things on social media, and they give you there's a lot of 1 minute clips, 30-second clips, 10-second clips. So you get half facts or 1/3 of a fact, or a lot of times it's half falsehood, 1/3 of falsehood. And then we think we know a little bit of what's going on. In reality, you really don't know what's going on. All right, your understanding of the whole situation is very minimal. And unfortunately, the intellectuality in the Muslim Ummah has gone down. We're literally very illiterate. We used to run the world when it comes to civilization. We used to be the greatest civilization on earth. Only 700 years ago, 600 years ago, 500 years ago. Even recently, up until recently, it was still pretty good. It was one of the top civilizations. It wasn't number one. But what happened? Why are we in the bottom?
Why we can't read anymore?
Yeah, we can't read. We cannot be consistent. We cannot do anything. And the way, just the rhetoric, the way we discuss, the way we try to handle matters is very emotional. Emotions is not going to change it. It's very reactionary. That's not going to change anything in the grand scheme of things. And then we just keep going back into the same pit hole over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? But if we take a step back, strategize, analyze, study, make a plan, and then move forward, then we could get something done and execute after that. But that requires a lot of factors to come together.
This is a great point, because even in teaching, I'm pretty sure a lot of the ma'alins that we know, the mu'allimeen, that the asatid, that we know on a personal basis, when they're teaching their classes, Islamic studies, the students some of them can't read. If they can read, they can't comprehend what they're reading. They don't know. Big words, like what does corresponding mean? Like, you're probably not good at algebra if you don't know what corresponding means, right? You see, these are words that are used in just basic academics. We can't read, we can't comprehend, we don't know, things happen, then everybody wants to go flood streets and, do X, Y, Z. And so even in this kind of approach as a place from jahl, just sheer ignorance.
Yeah.
And it just seems that everybody in the world knows except us.
Yeah.
And so even when you talk to young guys, I'm pretty sure you stop young guys before you say, "Hey, what's going on here?" Sometimes I ask guys like, what's happening in Somalia right now? What's happening? They're like, "I don't know, bro. I'm just trying to go hoop."
I'm just trying to go hoop. Yeah,
that's it.
That's very unfortunate. You don't even know what's going on in your country. Why do you think they brought you here?
They don't know
for a reason. And that's exactly. You're following the exact blueprint of why they brought you here. You don't even know what's going on in your own country. You don't even know who you are. You don't know where you come from. You know what's going on. You don't care. You don't care.
And then
you think you're American. You'll never be American. God. You will never be a first-class citizen here. And you should never become a first-class citizen. I don't know why people expect to be first-class citizens. You will never be. This ain't your country. You're not going to get anywhere. You might have the passport. You might have the citizenship. You might have all this. But in reality, we know who runs the country.
Yeah, it's not us. But that's enough.
what about your country, though? What do you know about your country? What about not even your country? What about the Muslim countries? What about the Ummah?
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in the Muslim Ummah.
We just don't take time to just figure out like who's what, and what's happening. I remember I did this when I was younger. Or not younger, I was younger. But once I started practicing, one thing I did was I was just watching documentaries on how some of these nation states were formed. And it's very insightful. Yeah. And you'll see a pattern. Yeah. And it'll make sense why we're in the situation that we're in. Yeah. And at that point, you'll have an impetus, a drive. And then you couple that up with Deen, learning your basic Deen. Yep. You have to know your Aqidah. You need to know your basic fiqh, navigate through the world, learn how to deal with the differences from other people. Yeah. And this is the model that we should all kind of be following with. The Muslims were never ignorant of their surroundings, right? And we were always people that were conscious and had self-awareness. We don't got it anymore. We're just confused people, and we think we know. This is the sad part is the social media gives us the illusion
Yeah.
of being knowledgeable and aware of what's happening. They say be aware about, social issues.
Yeah.
And we actually don't know even half of it.
Yeah.
All we know is what they want us to know.
Yes.
Whoever is feeding us.
Because the method of learning, what is your method of learning? If your method of learning is via social media, and that's where you're leveled, then I'm sorry. That's not where you're supposed to be getting your information from. There's clear ways of the methods of learning are known.
Yeah.
They're known. So obviously I don't want to be pessimistic, right? Because khair does exist, and we hope to be optimistic, and the Prophet ﷺ was always optimistic. So I think inshallah ta'ala we could have a great future if we just understand and recognize the issues, and we have to be self-aware. If we cannot have these conversations, if we cannot look at in the mirror collectively as a community, and we try to praise ourselves, then we're not going to get anywhere. We need to criticize ourselves so that we could get better, and then be optimistic. So we don't want to be pessimistic as well. وَالْفَعْلُ خَيْرٌ, as the Prophet ﷺ said, وَيُعْجِبُنِ الْفَعْلُ. So what do we have to do? First, we have to get our knowledge of our religion, because that's our identity, and secondly, knowledge of our surroundings, how we got here, what is going on in the world, politically, socially, economically, right? People don't know basic stuff about the social issues, the political issues, and the economic issues on all three levels. And before that, we discussed the intellectual, spiritual side of the religion.
Absolutely.
So knowledge is the key to defeating the enemies. And Ibn al-Wardi rahimahullah, he mentions this. He says, في ازدياد العلم إرغام العداء وجمال العلم إصلاح العمل. That the way to defeat the enemies is by increasing your knowledge, all types of knowledge. Knowledge is powerful, all right? As الرأي, as the Sha'r he once said, الرأي قبل شجاعة الشجعان هو أول وهي المحل الثاني. That knowledge and opinion and wisdom before bravery. All right? He was responding to the other Sha'r who said, السيف أصدق إنباء من الكتب في حده الحد بين الجد واللعب. Saying that the sword is the one that actually differentiates between what is serious and what is not serious. Meaning that military strength is what leads to sawab is that knowledge comes first, and then after that, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ did in Mecca, and then
there goes your blueprint.
There goes your blueprint.
Powerful.
There you go.
Right, as very powerful. Yeah. This is something that I was asking some of the brothers in the recent halqa that we had was, are we even ready for our izzah to be restored?
Yeah.
Like the Sahaba, imagine for them it was kind of like everything happened. Almost, it was overnight success.
Yeah.
Success that the world has never seen before, and it was literally placed in their hands. But they were able to run it, surprisingly. Right? These guys didn't know much about, most of them didn't know anything about politics. All they knew, but they had one thing they were strong with, steadfast, firm, was their deen, and their commitment, their loyalty, their wala to Allah and His Messenger.
Yes.
Right, and the bara from anything that is shirk and wa ahlihi, anything that's connected to it. And so that kind of loyalty, I feel like, is very important. Today, people are trying to do it backwards. They say, you have different groups that are like, okay, once we have the political conglomeration, we're all coming together, we can establish the Deeni aspect. And then the blueprint doesn't tell us that, though. The blueprint tells us the opposite, right? And if you do that, then Allah will give you the miftah of the dunya, and you will run it. But the question is, are we ready to run it?
Yeah.
That's a big issue.
And unity, we have a problem with understanding the concept of unity.
Let's
we
talk
think
on
that we think that the Muslims, like today is a 100-year anniversary of the fall of the Khilāfah, of the Caliphate. And people think that the Caliphate, there wasn't a political unity, but there was a political identity. But the Muslims were united. Not every Muslim area or country was under that, specific rule. Matter of fact, the last time the Muslims were united all together one time was during the time of Uthman ibn Affan, unity only lasted really 18 years.
SubhanAllah.
And they say specifically when Uthman ibn Affan, the ring of the Prophet ﷺ fell into the well in Medina.
Wow.
And Abu Dawud rahimahullah mentions in his Sunan that after the ring fell into the well is when people started to revolt against Uthman.
Whoa.
And that's when the rebels and the Khawarij, they started to rebel against them. So during the time of Abu Bakr, which lasted 2.5 years, and then Umar ibn Khattab lasted 10.5 years, and then the first 6 years of the Khilāfah of Umar, look at it, it's about 18 years, right?
Yeah.
18 years we had unity. After that, there was no unity. We know that the whole time of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu,
It was
turmoil.
Political turmoil.
The time of Muawiyah kind of came back for a short period, 20 years, and then right after that, went back to turmoil. And then it's been a mess ever since. So having a complete unity is a long shot, if not impossible, because it never happened except during the time of the Khulafah. Even during the time of Khulafah Rashidin, towards the end it didn't happen. Maybe a short stint during Muawiyah's time. But we did have like a singular power until the last 100 years. One power that was the major power for a long time. And there were some stints where there wasn't, like during the time of the Mamalik, and for a couple hundred years there was nobody that was, right? So even some of the ulama, they discuss were the Ottomans a caliphate or not. Most they say they're a caliphate, but some they say they were not a caliphate because they didn't have ruling power over the majority of the Muslim Ummah. So we have to understand that unity because sometimes you try to bring too many people together, now you forsake a lot of values, because people have different they have different ideologies, they come from different cultures, there's so many differences that it's hard to bring a lot of people together. But also that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some type of unity. We should have some type of unity because there are things that we come together in, and there are some values that we should not forsake. So there's a middle ground to that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. If you hold on to the rope of Allah Azza wa Jal, then more than likely we have more unity than division. So that's the goal. There should be more unity than division. But we shouldn't look to divide. But sometimes division is important because division differentiates between the truth and falsehood.
There you go.
And that's one of the issues we have in our community, is that people are confused. They don't know where the truth is. They don't know where the falsehood is, because the truth and the falsehood, there's not a clear separation. And that is why at this time we need people like Umar al-Khattab. The Umar al-Khattab, they serve these purposes. Umar al-Khattab, he comes and he says, you know what? There's going to be this and there's going to be this.
That's it.
Khalas. We're on this side, y'all on that side. Let's go. Al-Faruq. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ made dua, either for Umar al-Khattab or Abu Jahl. Amr ibn Hisham. He said one of the two, because these guys were the guys going to set the standards. They were going to set the standards.
A good point.
So that's the time we need to differentiate between the truth and the falsehood, because there's a lot of mixture. A lot of people don't know which one is which. They don't know what's the truth. They don't know what's the falsehood. Like, they'll hear opinions all over the place, and then what do people do? You know what? Yeah, some people say this and some people say that. As in, if everything, there's a balanced. Not everything, there's a balanced answer. Some things, there's clear cut. This is what we believe in. This is how we go about things, and we're not moving. And there's some things we have leeway. But how do you know which matters are compromisable and things are not? People don't even know that. But now even matters that are core, that are part and parcel of our religion, that are foundational matters, we're saying there's khilaf, there's a difference of opinion, there's two, like this is something that is part of our aqidah, part of our theology.
This is a good point. So do you think we'll ever have that? I mean, it doesn't sound like that this is practical. I know there's different movements that have tried to bring such type of unity, but if that's the case, if the foundation is something that's being differed on, then I don't know. What do you think about that? You think that this type of unity is practical?
That's a very difficult question, because there is experiments, and based off of experiment, they've all failed. That's the reality. They've all failed.
Yeah, that's my point. Historically, there's different movements,
and they have most of them, they kind of failed, and they're fading away, and the sun is setting for them. But perhaps the sun will come out another day, and perhaps those experiences can be benefited from. One of the major holes in those experiments, Allah alam and Allah knows best, is that there can't be too much compromising. You have to have an identity.
That's a good point.
What identity do you have? You have to operate. Everything in life, everybody has an identity. On a political level, on a social level, on a company level, in a school level, in a family level.
That's true.
Even families have identities. Individuals have identities. So you have to have an identity. What is your identity? Right? We focus so much on unity because of the fall that we forgot about the identity. So that's one side of things. Second matter is to build from the ground up, like the Prophet ﷺ said. All right? But then what happens is the people who are focusing on building from the ground up, what happened to them? They never translated to the second chapter. What's next? What's the next chapter? Now we're ready. What's the move?
Point.
So you have those two sides of the spectrum. Those are the two kind of where people went, and they both kind of failed. They've both been fading away. Maybe there's a middle ground to it where you have a longer vision, but at the same time you build from the ground up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And building from the ground up, the Prophet ﷺ was doing that for 13 years. 13 years building from the ground up. So we have to focus on that. And it all starts with knowledge. It all starts with knowledge. Then obviously acted upon that knowledge, and the rest is easy.
Sorry.
The rest is just gonna move on. But the mindset must be there.
Yeah. And
Right?
Patience is a big role. That's what I've noticed today is with these kind of efforts too. One thing I'll say, Allahu A'lam, one thing that seems to be apparent in the downfall is the lack of patience. People want the unity and their fruits yesterday. They want it right away. They don't want to wait. If there's no unity, they'll go move to the next thing, and just keep moving. And we're just hopping all around. Right, and so 13 years in Mecca, that's a long time.
Yeah.
You end up with like 40 guys of your whole da'wah. You know, that sounds demoralizing, but you're still on it. You didn't move. You're still loyal to the soil.
Yeah. So
You know what I'm saying? And so this is the point here, is this kind of, this type of mission and effort requires a lot of patience. It'll happen, right? By Allah's decree, it'll happen. It's just a matter of time and the right people, right? And so my next question to you is...
And just to, go off your point, the Prophet ﷺ does tell us, وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ, that victory comes with patience. And you cannot have patience unless you have ilm. The ignorant one is the one who moves around a lot. You know, Ali ibn Abi Talib has a famous quote narrated by Abu Nu'aym in his Al-Hilya. He says, الناس ثلاثة, people are three categories. عالم الرباني, a scholar who's Rabbani. Yani in the sense that he acts upon his knowledge and he teaches the beginner knowledge before he teaches the advanced parts of knowledge.
Yeah.
Second is متعلم على سبيل النجاة, that is a seeker of knowledge who is on the path to salvation. And the third is همع رعاع أتباع كل ناعق يميلون مع كل ريح لا يستطيعون إلى ركن العلم. He says here that they're همع الرعاع, that they're like following the wind, like sheep. They just follow whatever, right? They jump on a new bandwagon every time.
Bushes that just keep get pushed by the wind.
Pushed by the wolves, right? He says لا يلجؤون إلى ركن وثيق. They don't have a pillar to stand upon, meaning they don't have an identity. What are you trying to do?
No conviction.
What is your vision? What are you trying to do? What is your goal? What is your strategy? Nothing. ولا يستطيعون بنور العلم. They don't have the guidance of ilm.
SubhanAllah.
They don't have the pathway. So they don't have the recipe, and they don't have a menu. If you don't got a recipe, you don't have a menu,
They're on the menu.
then you're not at the table. You're definitely outside the building. You have no business being inside the building. But we have a lot of people in positions, unfortunately. They don't have the recipe, right? They don't have the menu,
They're at the table.
and they're at the table.
SubhanAllah.
So we really have to,
Space.
if those are our leaders, if those are the people representing us, then we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do.
See, I don't know. This is going to kind of be a radical thing, but I'm at a point where I think we just got to remove people. That's it. Just say, look, you did a great job. Go home.
I would disagree, man. You allow me to disagree?
Go ahead.
All right. I would disagree.
Maybe it's stemming from my impatience.
Yeah.
There goes my lack of knowledge. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
I think I see where the point you're going to, but you remove those people who you're replacing them with. There's a vacuum. The reason why they're there in the first place is because there's a vacuum. So first, aslan, if there were people, if they were expendable, right? You don't need to remove them. They're just gonna be gone, just like the wind.
That's a good point.
And you remember you said about patience, right? Patience comes with knowledge, and ignorance comes with a person who keeps moving because he doesn't have an identity, like we mentioned. So if we can establish an identity, establish knowledge, act upon that knowledge, then those people, they either get on that program, or they're just gonna disappear into the wind. They're gonna set like the sun and dissolve. So there's no need to remove, because aslan, who are you gonna replace them with? There's nobody else. Matter of fact, maybe we should even thank them, because at least they're doing something, even though they might not be the most qualified. And the Prophet ﷺ did tell us that at the end of time this will happen. The Prophet ﷺ, obviously this hadith is narrated by Imam Malik by way of Ibn Mas'ud, but the majority of the scholars, they say it's mawquf ala Ibn Mas'ud. It's one of the statements of Ibn Mas'ud, لكن له حكم الرفع, takes the, because it's discussing ghaybiyat, discussing the unseen. There's a long hadith. Part of the hadith says, سيأتي زمان كثير خطباءه, a time will come in which there's many speakers, قليل فقهاءه, the scholars of the religion are few, العلم فيه خير من العمل. At that time, knowledge is better than acting upon knowledge. Yani you need both, but now there's a time to learn. Now it's time to get knowledge, right? Because there's a lot of speakers, there's a lot of people discussing matters, but they have no what?
Qualification.
They have no qualification. But very, very few scholars. So Ibn Mas'ud, when he's mentioning this, right, radiyallahu ta'ala, it's something he's predicting. It's a time that will come. We're in that time right now. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also says in Hadith Abdullah ibn Amr, he says, اتخذ الناس رؤوسا جهالا, in the long hadith, right? He says that people put others in position that are juhal. They don't put themselves in position. Other people put them in position. Right? Why? حتى إذا لم يبقي عالما اتخذ الناس رؤوسا. When there was no scholars, who's replacing them?
That's true.
The juhal.
That's true.
So you're saying, take these people out, there's nobody to replace them with.
Wow.
So the people put them in position. So we need to what? We need to go back to the drawing board and actually start. What are we doing? So that's the way we can attain victory. So patience, before we get patience, you have to have knowledge. And if you look at the da'wah right now, it's based off of motivational matters. Motivation. Motivation taps into your emotional side. Emotional does not get you to get moving. That's supposed to be something that's secondary, that helps you, that helps your knowledge, so that if you take a left turn, you get back on track. But it's not supposed to be the asl.
Yes.
The origin
primary
is you learn every day. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he only used to give motivational talks once a week on Thursday. And that's why when Ibn Mas'ud, some of the tabi'een asked him, they said, we want you to speak to us every day, motivate us every day. He said, no, I'm not going to motivate you guys every day. Learn every day. But I'll motivate you guys once a week. That will keep you learning.
SubhanAllah.
So al-ilm yurith al-aql. Knowledge leads to intellectuality. Wal-maw'idha, motivational talks, motivational matters, whether it's online or in person, yurith al-atifa. It leads to emotion. And that's why every decision we make, every move you make, anything that happens, emotional decision, 2 days, 3 days, and then everybody just goes back to what they're doing. They forget about it. Then the next thing, but there's no plan. There's no strategy. What are you doing? What's going on? People don't even have their life in order, and they're talking about grand matters. Right? Fix your bed before you knock on the neighbor's door.
That's factual, actual. Would you say then, because I know our community is kind of really bent on, hey, we need political power. We need a piece of that pie. If we don't have that, then everything else really doesn't matter. But what we're saying now is that if you follow the blueprint, it's the opposite.
Yes.
The political, domination and positionary and having all of that, the influence comes after that a person has made reconciliation and rectification with their deen and their position with Allah. Then would you say Because some people will say, okay, we need I know this comes especially, as Salafi circles. Every single person needs to be rectified. Every Muslim needs to be rectified for the izzah of this ummah to return.
Every single person is difficult, but there definitely has to be a culture. There has to be some type of culture. If you look at the Sahaba, when the Prophet ﷺ started out, the first year, what was wajib? What was obligatory? Qiyamul Layl. Qum al-layla illa qalila. Surah al-Muzammil. It's one of the first few verses to come down. And that was going on for 1 year, that you had to stay up most of the night. So a culture of praying most of the night. And then it's not like they're going to go sleep during the day like we do at Ramadan when we go to sleep. They're going to work the next day. They're in the city. So they're literally sacrificing their sleep.
Wow.
And they did that for 1 year straight. Until the last ayah of Surah al-Muzammil came out. Inna rabbak. Why? It was to train that initial few. And many of them were from the 10 promised. Abu Bakr and Uthman and Ali and Zubayr and Talha. And these guys, they were the guys. And then they established the culture for the next guys coming in. Right? And then so when Umar al-Khattab became Muslim in the 6th year, he just got on that. So definitely there has to be a culture. But every single person is not going to be in the same level. It's impossible. Iman, people are going to have different Iman. People are going to have different, But a culture could be created that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba did create. So the blueprint does exist, right? And if you look at moments in history where the Muslims returned their glory, although temporarily, that culture did exist. That culture did exist, although it faded away. And that's another thing we need to study, and that is, why was it temporary? How come it didn't come back? لَعَلَّهُ سُنَّةٌ مِّن سُنَّ اللَّهِ الْكَوْنِيَّةِ. Perhaps it's from the Sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jal that, right? وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Everybody has their chance.
Everybody has their days.
Everybody has their days, right? So people are going to be up one day. Maybe it's a form of test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes tests us with power. Sometimes He tests us with humiliation, right? But if we want izzah to return, if we follow Allah Azza wa Jal and the Prophet ﷺ, we will return our izzah. That's a guarantee from Allah Azza wa Jal. مَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ الْعِزَّةَ. Whoever wants honor, فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا.
SubhanAllah.
Right?
وحقا علينا نصر المؤمنين. كان حقا علينا
نصر المؤمنين. كان حقا علينا نصر المؤمنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us victory.
Yes.
But we have to follow His commandments. And the Prophet ﷺ, you look at the majority of us, just pull up the Fajr in any masjid. Everybody there is, look at the age range, in their 60s.
SubhanAllah. Oh my God.
You want to pray in Masjid al-Aqsa, but you can't even pray at the masjid next to your crib.
There goes a culture for you.
There's a culture for you. Like, how are you going to do that? So we have to live in reality.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot live in a life of pragmatism. We have to be pragmatic. We cannot live in a life of, ideals. Ideally, some things we would love, but first we have to go through the steps. Maybe we could do that in our lifetime. Maybe it will never happen. Allahu A'lam. But the blueprint does exist. At least we can attempt.
Yes.
We can attempt. We have to make an attempt. We have to try. And then we'll see how things turn out. Right? But to even attempt, you have to know how things played out before. You have to learn. You have to study, analyze, and then see what's going on.
There goes that end.
Right. And that goes back to knowledge. That's why it goes back to knowledge. So, al-ilm wal-amal are the two keys to any type of success, any type of honor, and any type of victory. Allah knows best.
Yeah. No, Jazakallah khairan. I think, we could really get deeper into it, but I think right now this was a fruitful discussion that we had, because these kind of topics come up by way of, hey, hijrah and voting and who should we do this and kada wa kada. But I think we always miss that aspect of following their footsteps that were of those that came before us.
Yeah.
Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He says in those famous ayat of Ramadan, He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي.
Yes.
So let them respond to me.
Yes.
If they're truly believers.
Yes.
And they are guided. So this is, we have to be people that are responding to Allah when He makes a call. It's not enough for us to cry and to just feel sad for people. but we should really feel bad for ourselves that we haven't been responding to Allah's call. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for assistance. Any last minute advice on this? I think I can't stress this enough. The seerah is really untouched. I think the younger guys here will also agree with the young guys their age, which is pivotal for them and for us, for the young generation coming up, man. Because if we don't know who the Prophet ﷺ is, we don't know how he built people, and this is one of the hardest jobs. It's the hardest job is to build people. We build buildings and we build our money up and stuff, but building up people is very difficult. And he did that, and so that shows us that you don't have to be a prophet, you don't have to be the Sahaba, but follow in those footsteps, and inshallah, victory and success is yours. Absolutely, for this ummah. Any last advice before we conclude? Jazakallah khairan.
The one thing you mentioned at the end there, human capital always trumps resources. In our community, we always focus on resources. We need to focus on human capital. The resources will always be there. It'll always come. But if you don't have human capital, if you don't have quality, nothing else matters.
SubhanAllah.
Right? But for human capital to increase or to have quality humans, you have to work on yourself first. So my advice to my brothers and sisters is take this Ramadan as a life-changing Ramadan. Get out of your heedlessness. A lot of us are heedless. We're heedless when it comes to our goals in life, our goals in the hereafter. We're heedless when it comes to how we're going to implement and execute that.
SubhanAllah.
So work on your inner self, firstly, and your relationship between Allah Azza wa Jal. Work on your knowledge, act upon the knowledge, and be around people who will increase you in ilm, in amal, in da'wah, in every aspect of society, right? And then after that, if Allah blesses you, then after that you can move on to increasing that human capital. And then the resources will come afterwards. And that's how the Prophet ﷺ did it. The blueprint exists, all we have to do is follow it. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Until next time, Deen lovers, like, share this video, and hopefully we'll have our Sheikh back again. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.